Story 1 Pebble Face. Sarah was looking after her cousin for the night. As bedtime approached, Sarah stopped by her cousin's room to say goodnight. She found her cousin using his art kit, painting a man's face on a small canvas. The face made Sarah shudder. It was engulfed by terrible calluses, as if small rocks bulged from beneath the skin. It seemed to stare directly into Sarah's eyes. "What's that?" Sarah asked, concerned. "Pebble Face," answered her cousin, dipping his brush in more paint. Desperate to escape the face's gaze, Sarah quickly wished her cousin good night and closed his door. She paced up and down the living room, unable to sleep. That grotesque face haunted her thoughts. She impulsively hopped into a tiny closet and shut herself in for a few minutes, feeling a sense of security there. She brushed up against a leather jacket with a large button in the middle. She played around with the button in the darkness for a while, which calmed her nerves and gave her the courage to leave the closet. Throughout the night, whenever the memory of that wretched face was too much to bear, Sarah would hide herself in that dark closet, fidgeting with the jacket button. Morning came and Sarah woke up on the couch. Yawning and stretching, she heard her aunt's car pull up in the driveway, so she entered her cousin's room to announce his mother's arrival. Her voice fell short, however, when she found her cousin making the final touches on his painting. The man with the pebble face was standing in a dark closet, wearing a leather jacket with a button in the middle. Story 2 A Different Sport. Julie biked across the neighborhood to babysit her cousin Bobby, as she did every Friday afternoon. She called it Babysitting and took great pleasure in looking after the tame, intelligent boy. She entered the house using the extra key her aunt had given her. She was greeted by Bobby's baseball trophies, which adorned every room and always renewed Julie's astonishment at her cousin's athletic achievements. She sometimes spent the whole afternoon browsing little Bobby's Museum of Honors. "Bobby, I'm here," Julie shouted so her cousin could hear from his room, where she often found him shining his baseball cards or watching the latest game. Julie's thoughts were shaken by a ghostly moan from within the house. "Julie!" She pressed her back to the wall, her eyes searching wildly across the living room. "Is that you, Bobby?" she managed to whisper. "Julie!" She knew her cousin was not the prankster type, so she grabbed one of the baseball trophies to defend herself. She had taken a few steps forward when she heard a sudden crash behind her. She spun around and saw she had only tipped over a bottle of her aunt's purple nail polish. Before she could muster a sigh of relief, the hoarse groan returned louder than before. "Julie!" She pulled open a closet door to hide herself, but met a shadowy figure waiting inside, its disfigured face staring from the darkness. Julie ran to Bobby's room and locked the door behind her. She found Bobby seated at the side of his bed, looking up at her with his calm, patient gaze. "Someone's here, Bobby," Julie's voice cracked. She heard something heavy drag toward the bedroom door. She pulled her cousin's baseball bat off its rack and held it behind her head, ready to swing with all her strength. She wheezed with fear as long fingers stretched from beneath the door. Julie suddenly realized that her hands felt slimy and that blood was dripping down one side of the bat. She dropped it with a desperate yelp and turned back to the intruding fingers whose nails seemed to be painted purple. Julie froze with terror as she heard Bobby raise his bat. "I got tired of baseball," he said, "so I'm trying a different sport." Story 3 Black Umbrella. Nathan's parents had left for the night in a hurry, telling him the babysitter would arrive shortly. He had never had a babysitter, but he looked forward to meeting someone new and maybe making a new friend. Nathan waited patiently to hear the door open and the babysitter greet him. An hour passed, and Nathan figured the babysitter might be having car trouble or couldn't find the house. He walked to the living room to grab a book, but froze in terror. Before the front door stood a lady wearing a dirty, wrinkly dress, her unkempt hair covering most of her face. She held a black umbrella at her side. It was closed and pointed to the floor, dripping onto the mat. Nathan stepped backward and cautiously escaped to his room. He shut his door, hopped into bed, and crawled under the covers. He wasn't sure what to do. Call his parents? They might accuse him of whining. He knew they only would have chosen the best babysitter for him. He had already done his homework and had dinner, so he was fine with going straight to sleep. But he found it hard to relax, knowing he was alone with this unneighborly stranger. The night wore on, and Nathan, still unable to sleep, figured he should go to his desk and work on a puzzle or something. He lifted the covers and felt his heart sink as he stared across the moonlit room. The lady now stood near his bed, watching him in the darkness. The black umbrella still hung from her hand. Nathan pulled the covers back over his head and quaked with fear. There was nowhere to run, so he took deep breaths to calm himself down. Maybe she had simply come to wish him good night. He kept quiet and stayed in bed until morning. When he heard the front door open and his parents call his name, Nathan peeked over the covers and saw he was alone in the room. He stood up and rushed to his parents. They seemed worried and hugged him tightly. "What's wrong?" he asked. His mother caressed the side of his face. "It must have been scary being alone all night," she said. "We just got the news. The babysitter we hired was on her way here last night. She was walking in the rain when a speeding car took her life."